Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. Today I want to share with you a clip from a recent live event. This is a members only live. If you want to be present for these, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and checking out the membership page. Getting involved at whatever level you enjoy. You'll receive perks and access to these weekly live events. In this one, Tales from the Cryptmaster's hanging out, and we're actually going to talk about the thing that we are most concerned about for Splinterlands in August 2023. What is the biggest concern facing our game today? Tales from the Cryptmaster's hanging out, myself, and there's a live audience, so we get into it. Stick around, stay tuned, have an amazing day, and special thanks to Tales. Check out his channel. The link is in the description. Bye for now. And I want to maybe transition a little bit because this feels like a little bit of a conversation about what land could be on the positive, but also the negative. I think we agree it's the biggest thing probably ever. But that feels like it begs the question, like what's going on right now that has got you the most concerned? I feel like this is the thing I'm most excited about. I think there's real opportunity with land that it could be a home run. I actually believe that, and that's why I've covered up positively and bullishly lately with respect to this. But I'd love to talk, and if you want time to think about the question, I'm happy to start the conversation. But is there a thing that's a forefront of mind for you, Tales, that feels it's the biggest concern, the biggest question, the biggest red flag for you right now within Splinterlands? I'd love to maybe unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have an answer for you there. But before I give you that answer, I want to just touch upon something you mentioned there. With what could happen, the launch of land, it doesn't actually have to be the actual rewards that drives the price and kickstarts the spark that gets this engine going. Never underestimate exuberance and greed when it comes to projects in crypto. It only takes so many people to just say, hey, I'm buying all my DEC and converting SPS to DEC in the liquidity pools, and I'm going to land and see what we see.
Yeah.
Come hell or high water. And all of a sudden, a lot of people start doing that, and then all of a sudden, crazy things start to happen with DEC, with SPS, with cards, with assets, with land. It doesn't, with crypto, it's funny because you don't actually need to see results or ROI necessarily in the real world. You sometimes only need to have the perception of it to generate the real returns. And that's what's interesting with this, because we don't know how people are going to react when it comes online. If we have people that just say, hey, I believe in this long term, and there's enough of them, if there's enough people pulling the rope in the right direction, crazy things can happen. So from that perspective, I think we have to be aware of that. Even I mentioned before, a kind of bearish scenario where the rewards don't justify the investment or the cost. Sometimes it's not about the actual rewards. It's just the I guess the FOMO and the can make crazy things happen.
Yes.
So we'll have to be on the lookout for that. Now, going back to your question, what is my biggest concern? In this very critical moment in time in Splinterlands history, my biggest concern is, we've always been asking the question, land, right? That seems like to be a meme in the community. I think the bigger question might be, or the bigger concern might be moving forward, what now, right? And what I mean by that is, what happens if we launch land and instead of being a big bang effect, it's a whimper? And kind of like the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars when it says punch it, and you just kind of get that kind of noise on the engines. What if that happens with Splinterlands? Because then the question is, what now? What other levers are left to pull if that's the response we get on Splinterlands? Because what's our next saving grace? What's our next bet, or what's our next pony to try and get to where we want to go? And I don't see an answer there. Like if you ask what now, I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to see what the team's answer to that would be in their strategy meetings internally. because I'm sure this has had to come up. Like, just looking at their runway, and they're projecting things and predicting things, and going, well, if this doesn't work or this doesn't, do what we want to do, what can we go to next? Because they have to project, their capital runway and their revenues. And I'm curious what else they have up their sleeve. Is it Invenium? Is it a new partnership? I don't know. But that's my biggest fear, my biggest question.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the unsatisfying answer in my mind, but I think this is the real answer. If LAN 1.5 doesn't do what we wanted to, I think the next big landmark is like what we are thinking of as LAN 2.0. And I say that because the 50 liquidity pools that are supposed to come with respect to the tokens that LAN is supposed to produce should have an interesting implication for DEC liquidity and then the flywheel. So to me, that's actually not inconsequential, but I think that's going to be a real disappointing sell to the community if LAN 1.5 launches. Can you imagine coming out and being like, it's okay, guys, LAN 1.5 was a dud, but wait for LAN 2.0, it'll drive everything. Like that's not going to be very unsatisfying if it's even accepted. And for I think a lot of the audience, it'll be like, oh, I knew it. It'll just be this cattle or what's the word? Like it's a moment that will drive certain opinions to a negative place that I'm not sure can be recovered from, at least for some of our community. That to me feels like I think unfortunately, and one more quick note, you not tied to this idea of what would happen next is in terms of what other things could they pull out of their bag. To me, I feel like we would have to turtle up as a company, as a game, as a community, if 1.5 doesn't do what I think it's going to do, if it launches and it's a real dud, I think what has to happen is layoffs. I think what has to happen is securing the future development in the core, making sure because we don't know if the next bull market, aggro seems to think imminent, but we don't know that. And with their bags being held in DEC and Bitcoin and Ethereum, I would argue we need to be real careful if LAN 1.5 launches with a whimper. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the bumper sticker is land or bust is basically the answer to my question of what now, right? Because like you said, I mean, if LAN 1.5 isn't the answer, I have to double down and say LAN 2.0 or 3.0 is the answer. And that's, again, what we were talking about is so much is riding on this concept of land. And at the same time, you have in the community a lot of people saying, hey, I want to play the card game. I want to do arena draft mode. I want to do player experience. I want to do this. I want to do that. And there's not going to be an appetite or a room for that. Like you said, the team's going to have to turtle up and buckle down and, get the submarine to underwater here because, it's going to be difficult. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's, again, I know we've kind of taken this down a path that's, necessarily the cheeriest and brightest, but it's good to have the perspective, understand what could possibly ahead. Now, if that scenario happens, there's to be asset deterioration and bleeding of players at that point. And to your point, it's going to basically come down to who are the true believers that the project can be salvaged and that there's a future. And you think the salt mines were salty this past year? You haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah.
If that scenario happens, look out, because the player base might go from 2 to 5,000 down to under 1,000, and then it's going to be real crypto winter here.
Yeah.
But you've been here before. You've seen what's happened in the past. I mean, you were playing Splinterlands when you weren't really making any money. There was wasn't even a thought in your mind. The question is if that scenario happens, does Splinterlands have 9 lives? Does it have another chance to rebound and rally and be innovative and come back with something at the right time, at the right place, at the right moment to be relevant again?
Yeah.
That would be the bigger question. And, look, I mean, we can't predict what the Fed's going to do in the US. We can't predict what crypto is going to do, what Bitcoin's going to do, what Ethereum's going to do. But it's silly to say that we're not influenced or impacted by that. So even if Splinterlands land is wildly successful, right, the level of success, amplification of that success in a bull run for crypto versus a bear market for crypto is significant. And we're dependent on that, whether we like it or not. We're going to be impacted by it. So hopefully we get lucky. Hopefully we get lucky here.
Yeah. And I'd like to add, I agree with what you're saying, but I'd like to add a bit of optimism. I wouldn't say this is like a 50-50 coin toss that this is going to work. To me, for a lot of reasons, and if you want, we could spend some time unpacking it, are why, almost like why would we be bullish about the success of land? Or why would we expect it to work, maybe, is the question. Because I think there's a lot of reasons you could hold up and say, I can't prove to you it's going to launch well, but I suspect it will because of a variety of things, including the recent delay with its access on MavChat. To me, that's, of course I'm disappointed. I want to see that thing sooner than later. And I said earlier, it needs to launch like now, we need it out. But I'm saying, like you said, we want it not just released early, we want it released right. And so I actually believe that it's going to launch well. I actually believe that they're going to do a great job. I think as we've seen some of the eye candy from Nate, it looks clean. It looks good. I'm truly excited for what we've seen. And I think it's okay if we see a modest utilization of it. Modest to me, 10%, that's okay. But man, I think despite that optimism, because I think what I just said is optimistic, and there's a confidence I'm stating there. I think you have to also wrestle with the fact that, and we are right now, that it's possible that it not happen well. And if it doesn't happen well, revenue is a real problem. Not that land is going to provide revenue directly for the team either, but if it launches well, what might happen is that the valuations go up, and then people start to become more sort of less thrifty with their Splinterlands portfolio, because you can now, if your portfolio doubles or goes up substantially because the land launches well, I suspect that means more pack sales. Maybe we get a new promo card that sells well. Maybe we get that mini set release and it sells well. Maybe, they, on the heels of land, they launch draft mode would be an option, but I was actually meaning to say the season pass. And then we start to see some revenue, even if it's just trickling in. We need to get some revenue on the table. Hey, like that is so key. And land doesn't even begin to really truly directly answer that issue. What are your thoughts on that? Like what is the next revenue source that Splinterlands needs to chase after? Is it one of those things, or is there something altogether different that I didn't mention maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think two revenue streams that Weird Beard has talked about in the past would be battle passes and arena draft modes. I think those are doable and make sense. So are those huge revenue streams? No, but they're different and they are revenue streams. But I want to go back to one other point that you made earlier on what are the metrics that looking at to seeing how land is successful. Let me just ask you a question, and let me give you an answer to a question as well. The question is if land is released next Tuesday, how much are you going to go live with of your land personally on day one? I can tell you of my land, I haven't locked and loaded for 170 tracks or 170 plots out of 200 plots. So I'm going to go with 85% of my land. What percentage of land are you going to have live, Dwayne, as an example?
Well, so Tuesday is still 6 days away. My desire would be that every single plot, I have 23 plots. And I still, by the way, I'm going to put this out there. I'm trying to get rid of that last plot. So one of my 23 plots was gifted to a guy named Klaus. Klaus, if you're listening to this, buddy, I still haven't seen your IGN pop through. I need that information. I'm still happy to give it to you. This is kind of the last call. I said that it would be the last call like I don't know, a month ago, and I haven't seen anything come through. If I don't see something shortly, I'm going to be re-gifting that plot. So I have 23 plots of land right now. I suspect I'll keep all 23 of those, and then I'll just buy this last plot and give that away. But my point is, I hope to launch every plot of land I own. And whether that's 22 or 23 plots, I hope to launch every one of them. Now, that would be a million plus DC if I go 50, if I go hard. And I do want to max those. So, you know, I don't have a million DC. I have 570,000 DC. And so then I need to sell some crypto, or I need to do something. So long story short, hopefully all of it. I don't know if I'm entirely ready. In fact, I am not entirely ready.
Well, and this is where I think if you take a poll, and maybe it's something you do on YouTube in a poll, maybe that you or I do, because from a land ownership perspective, you go to Splinter Cards, for example, and you see the landowners, you see all the people that own and have surveyed land right now. You know, if I'm saying I'm going to be 85%, you're saying that you're 100%, you know, but you were talking earlier, the success level is 10%, right? Perhaps. You know, if the community is saying, hey, we're going to go, and if I own land, I'm bring it live, we could be undershooting expectations here by saying 10 to 20%. You know, again, some of the large region holders and stuff are, you know, obviously factors where maybe they only bring 10% of their region online. That might impact the numbers, but you know, from what I can gather, the people that I'm talking to, having conversations with in the community, people are going to be bringing on because they've been waiting for it. They bought it and they want to use it.
Yep.
So if the sentiment out there for the average player is, hey, we're bringing, you know, 100%, 80%, whatever that happens to be, a high percentage of land that they own, maybe this thing, to your point, from an expectation perspective, is wildly successful. And maybe people are just underestimating, you know, maybe people have thrown out in the community 10 to 20%.
Yeah.
People have got that number stuck in their head when realistically it could be certainly much higher. Right? It's 40% when you average out all the region holders and stuff. You really have to do an analysis on, like, if you pull up splintercards.com right now, for example, and you go to the land section and you get a list of all the landowners. You can see under the land area here,
Pretoria or rich list?
Rich list. And you'll see the actual, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see how many plots everyone owns and the total number of surveyed users. And it scrolls down for several thousand, right? But the point is at the top of that list, you have a lot of people with regions, and maybe only 10% of those people are bringing plots online. But all these people here from 1,200 on down with 5 plots or 4 plots, whatever.
Wow.
If 100% of them are coming online, right?
Wow.
What percentage of land comes online? What percentage of, if you export this to Excel, for example, and you look at who are the region holders and who are the average holders, like the average Joes in Dodgeball, right? What is, you know, if we assume that all these people that own land or 10 plots or less are bringing 100% of their stuff online, how does that compare numbers wise to those that have 4 regions or 3 regions? That can maybe give you a more accurate estimate of what percentage of land is actually going to be occupied. Because again, if you own maybe less than 50 plots of land, maybe percentages 80% or more of that comes online. So I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
Just an exercise, and I think we might be surprised by the results of that.
Let me just read a couple comments from the chat, and then I don't know if there's more that you want to touch on with respect to the land or anything else. Paul was making a comment that new player experience. He said none of this works. None of our game, none of the growth that we're hoping for works without a new player experience. But simultaneously raised the point that the team needs more revenue streams other than booster packs. Absolutely. Either, I think, you know, I don't know if draft mode is going to represent a value to their wallets exactly, but it might, I guess it would, because it would represent a sale mechanism for packs. And so that's interesting. But then the season pass definitely sounds like it's going to put revenue in their pockets. And yeah, man, this has to be after land launch as well, something about broadening the player experience, and I don't just mean from a new player perspective. I actually mean from just the existing player base, adding depth of and joy here within Splinterlands through new game modes, through new skins being released, maybe through a gated season pass, different things that could put money into the pocket of Splinterlands, the company, but simultaneously add extra joy to me as a player. To me, that's what I think about when I think about player experience, not just the new perspective. Till 2.0.
Yeah, and I think going back to Paul's first point there, I think the accurate statement is probably Splinterlands need players for the economy and asset values to grow. They can probably sustain and be operational with the current player base, just not losing a significant amount. I think that's important to delineate there.
Yeah.